Hey guys, this guy here from YCG, your casual gamer. It is time for a mid-season request from one of our followers. It has come to my attention that Matinee is no longer working in the newest version of Unreal Engine. Therefore, in the following few episodes, I'm going to show you guys how to use Sequencer. Of course, going with the basics, we are going to be recreating this little sequence together. So you have this leaf over here that's going to move in a transform location like so. And then when you reach the other side, it's gonna reset the loop back to beginning. And there you go. So stay tuned. Alright, so if you're wondering where I am, I just created something inside the starter with the starter content inside the first person template. And I'm using the engine 4-23 just to make sure that we have a up-to-date engine ish, just so that we can work with Sequencer and have all the same features together. So if you want to be able to follow these, all you need is this and this. Two little platforms over here that we're going to be animating together. So let's create our sequence. So to make it, you can just go on cinematic on top and add level sequence. I already have a folder to put it in. I'm going to put it here and call it test sequence -1. Right away, it's going to open up the sequencer for you that I'm going to bring up over here on screen. So basically, when you look at it, it really looks like the widget animation blueprint inside Unreal that they already had, and they adapted it to make a better, much better Matinee, and that now you can do pretty much everything with it. And I really like this right now. I use it all the time to make my scenes. I didn't even know Matinee was gone because I never use it anymore. So what I mean by this is that user interface, if you go inside the widget blueprint, just to show you guys, it really much look like this over here. To make the animations for the widget, you have the tracks, you have your auto key, you have your smoothing over here, and you can look over here, the smoothing curve, and you can have, it's all the same thing over here. And they adapted it to make a level sequence, and I love it really much. So let's go grab this over here, bring it back over here. This we don't need anymore. So I'm going to bring it back to the bottom of here just so we can be following together. So now the main difference between Sequencer and Matinee over here is that with Matinee open before, it would make a copy of your viewport so that you can be inside the editor called Matinee, that is the sequencer. And that would pose a problem before. I got two over here. Let's just close that. It would pose a problem before because let's say I'm inside the sequencer right now. And I decide, oh, this is in the way, so I'm going to move it on the side over here. And then I start making my animation, and then I exit the sequencer, I close it. In my scene, this would have been resetted to 0 if I was inside Matinee. But since I'm inside Sequencer now, you can adjust your scene as much as you want while Sequencer is open. And that's a big thing. It doesn't look like it, but let's say you're inside Matinee, and before I would be animating my stuff, and you have your tracks and everything, and you have like this platform and this platform that's moving, but you start moving everything in your scene, and as soon as you would leave Matinee, everything would reset back to what it was before. So if you would forget that you were inside Matinee, you would lose a month of time having to replace everything after you're done Matinee. Another thing is also you can save your sequence as much as you want. So as soon as I start moving stuff, I can save it. In Matinee, you would have to exit Matinee every time to be able to save. So let's make our sequence. So I want this platform to go up and go over here. So we're moving in a transition and a translation movement. So to add a track, very simple. You can have your mesh selected over here. Go to track. Go to actor to sequencer, and you're going to see that right away it suggests this over here. You could look for it over here, but it'd be very hard to find. But as soon as you have something selected, it's going to prompt you, is that the one you want to have a track for? And right away it opens a transform over here. Now there's another way to do it, and that's my favorite over here. So I'm going to delete that track. Let's say I select my mesh over here, and I just select over here, just click in the emptiness of the sequencer over here and press the S key on your keyboard. Not only is it going to make a track for your mesh now, but also it's going to add a keyframe for the location, rotation, and scale, making it its original state. So if I start moving over here and I start moving it here, well, right away it knows that the beginning should be right over here. So that's very neat. It really saves a lot of time in the long run. So I suggest you use the S key instead of the manual way to do it. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the auto key over here. So you have the auto key and the snapping over here. And if you want to be able to move inside your sequencer, you can hold shift and middle mouse button, and it's going to scroll on the bar. You can also move over here. There's a way also when you alt drag around, control drag, you're going to make your timeline smaller and bigger. So that's a way to really move around fast if you want. Again, just to be more precise, you can make your timeline start at a certain point if you want, or you can make your timeline be longer or shorter by this over here. So I bring it to 90 just for that, and let's shrink it down like that. So all right, so let's say I take off the auto key and I have the snapping tool over here. If I alt drag a copy of this one over here, let's say I alt drag it over here, and I alt drag this over here. If I move this one over here and I want to make it equal to this one, I could just go like this and manually go, but if I have snapping on, as soon as I'm going to hover the 60 over here, it's going to snap to it because the snap is on. If snap was off and you had a big sequence, it'd be harder to just be, see, I'm always stuck on 59 or 61, and maybe that's where it is, that's where the snapping is. No, it's 60. And there you go. So keep that in mind. Using snap tool is very nice for this when you have big sequence that you want to have all in order. Let's say you're working in the industry and you need it to be very precise. That's how you would do it. So now for the auto key, let's say I want to move that platform. Let's make this a bit bigger. There we go. I want to be at 30 frame. So that's 1 second because we're working in 30 frames per second. I want to bring the platform up. Now you see that there's no node that happened because I'm not an auto keying. And that's where the main difference is. I would have to say I move on the z-axis, I would go inside location, add a node over here, or if I want all the transform to be selected, I just create this and all the transform are going to be here and I have a new setup. And now you can see that the animation works promptly. Now if I want to do it other way, faster, I find, is creating a key whenever you move. So if I start moving over here, so I'm going to be in auto key, I go back to the 30 frame, I move on the z-axis, I go up. And there you go. You're already there. Already created a frame at the perfect place and you're ready to move on. Now I want at 90. I made it too big. Now I want at 90. I want the platform to be all the way over here. I'm going to make it go like that. And there you go. Now you're going to notice one thing right away. You're going to notice that you have this kind of curve going on right now. And this is where that auto key can fail. Is that since I moved up over here to 30, I think there's a way to set the auto key to key all. I think there's a way, key all channels transition when you do the auto key. I think that's what it is. And if I just try this again, let's see if this works. I think actually that's what it is. If I go back to the beginning and I selected all key, so if I go back to 30 and I move this up, yeah, there we go. You're going to see it as a key to everything. Sometimes that's what you might want if you want to have something static. Because you can, as you can see over here, is what I did before is the auto key was only on the key chain. So it only changed the z-axis over here. And then when I was at 90, I decided to move to on the y-axis. So I was not only moving on the z-axis anymore, but I was moving on the y-axis. And if you look at the y-axis over here, it started moving from the beginning. But there is no point over here telling me that when I was right here, that this is where I want it to be. And even if I put them right now, you're going to see that it still makes this little curve. And that brings me to another thing. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you might want to have all the keys to work, depending on what you're doing. And the other thing also is you're going to notice that when you right click on a node, you have all these options over here, and they all have different way to work. The one I want to show you today is the linear, because right now we want to make a static lift. It goes up, then goes right. So how would I do that? Because right now, if I leave it on auto, it's going to make an auto smooth. So if you look at the curve over here, you're going to see that the curve makes a nice little smooth transition, and then you have that little transition that's going to make that curve, and you might not want that. So the best way to fix it is grab everything, right click on it, and make them linear. And you're going to notice right now that everything is static, and that's what I wanted. And I even wanted this to be straight, and there you go. So if you wanted this to stay there a bit longer before it starts moving, you can just drag those, select those two. I'll drag a copy to 45, and then you would have this stops there and then it goes here, and you would be done your little static lift. So save everything. Now now that you've seen me do it once, I'm gonna let you do the second one. That is gonna, as soon as it gets to 45, is to start moving over here so that when you're on this side, you're going to be able to go on the other side. And I'm going to speed up the video. We're going to add the track over here in the same sequence. So let's go. Alright, there we go. Now we have this working. Let's now we have to trigger them inside the scene, because if I go inside play right now, first of all, since sequencer is open, it's going to remember where you are in the frame, so make sure to bring it back to 0. And nothing is there to trigger your sequence. So the best way to trigger it, it's going to add trigger points. So add a trigger volume over here, one over here, and I'll drag a copy, and we're going to bring it to this side over here. Another thing over here, like I was saying, is I can, if I want to be very precise where my trigger volume is right here, I can go with the line over here, but this is where it's fun. I can just move this here. Don't have to close the sequencer and try to figure it out by myself. I can just go like this. Now the platform's at the right place, and I can have it selected like this. And then I can bring it back to 0, and I'm ready to do my program. Now to make the program, I prefer to have sequencer closed just to make sure nothing bad happens. So from here, you can go on the level tab. If you don't have it open, you can go in Windows and levels, or you can open your level blueprint over here, and I click on this little controller. It opens up right away. Another nice shortcut over here to open up your level blueprint. So having these selected, go inside and add an actor collision begin overlap, and we're going to play our sequence from there. So as soon as the player goes inside trigger volume, you're going to have this sequence. So you're going to have this selected right here. That's the sequence we created together. We're going to right click, create reference, and play. And it's going to say play sequencer right here. You're going to connect it over here, and you're done. So this should play. So let's go ahead and see if it works. Go inside scene. I get over here. It goes up, and then it goes back. And there you go. Now you can see the first problem you're going to encounter is this over here. It's always going to restart the scene. And why is that? Why isn't it keeping the state at the end? And that's something that I couldn't find for the life of me. I tried to look online, and there don't seem to be the option to do it yet. Maybe in the further engine version there is, but right now there isn't. And what I mean by that is if I go back inside the sequencer over here, if I right click on the track I'm using, so we have two tracks right now. I click on the first one with the right click, I go to properties, it says over here when finished, there's going to be project default. Now I went to check in the editor preference and the project setting, but I couldn't find a way to change the project default. So by default, the sequence, when it finishes, it brings you back to the first state. So it resets to 0. And that's not what you want, because you want your lift to wait for you when you're done the sequence. So what you're going to do is, instead of project default, you're going to go to keep state. And you're going to have to make this manually for each track you have. If ever somebody knows how to make it for the project default, please leave it in the comment below. I would love people to know that, myself included, because it's very tedious to always remember to put every track on keep state just to be able to have your scene working well. I understand that sometimes you want it to reset, but in the most part, when using sequencer, you want it to go once and to keep state at the end. So now that I did that, if I go back inside the level, you're going to see that it goes up. When it gets to the end, it stays there and nothing happens. Furthermore, now if I get on the other side, this one's not programmed yet. You're going to see it's very simple. You're going to select this over here, go inside your level blueprint, right click, actor, collision, begin overlap, and you're going to grab the same sequencer and just click reverse play, play reverse. And you are done. So let's compile and save, see if everything works well. Now, when you test it at the final, again, better to close sequencer just to make sure everything is good. You can keep it open. I just prefer to close it. Now I get to one side, I get to the other side, and it resets the loop. Now, it's not a perfect program. If I wanted to, I could just jump off and I would break the program right here. But this was just to show you guys the introduction on sequencer, how to make a basic sequence. So I hope you like this. If you are trying to do the Matinee and the first season, that's going to be my go-to episode now, since Matinee won't be there anymore to help you. I'm going to refer to this one so that it pretty much is the same thing. You make two lifts and one brings you back to the starting point. And in the next episode, I would like to show you guys how to make a small sequence, how to make a nice camera sequence. So you're going to have multiple cameras, like let's say 2, 3 cameras with fade in, fade out, and how to switch from one from the other and then go back for the playing area. So have a good day and see you next time.